So looking forward to our work together and our time together. So Ashley, I'm going to pass it to you for JFF introduction.
Thank you. Beth, can everybody hear me? Or Beth, can you hear me? I'll just check with you. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for having us. I'm looking forward to this conversation. My name is Ashley Bliss Lima, and I'm with Jobs for the Future, or JFF for short. You'll hear us reference both. And we'll be partnering with each of you as I work and lead the network demonstration project on behalf of JFF. I have two colleagues with me today, Tara Smith and Caroline DeAndrea. So if you both would chime in and introduce yourself.
So hi, everyone. I am Tara Smith. I'm an Associate Research Director at JFF, and I will be talking about ITA and PDP in a moment. Thank you.
And hi, everyone. I'm Caroline DeAndrea. I'm a Program Manager at JFF. Happy to be here and meet all of you. And I'll be speaking a little bit later about the two service areas.
And hi, everybody. My name is Paul Markham. I'm with SOVA, so I'm a support partner of the collaborative, and I'm from Kentucky. So this is one of the things that makes me so happy about this project. I was 10 years at Western Kentucky and also had a fellowship at the CPE working on adult learning initiatives. And if anybody can remember as far back there, the Regional Stewardship Initiative, that was my project for 27 counties. So it's just great to be here. And my role, in addition to supporting the collaborative, is supporting you when we start getting to the point where there are pathway services being delivered to you. So you'll see me and other SOVA team members at that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Dr. Mayo, would you please lead us off?
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Mayo from Bluegrass Community and Technical College, and I'm the lead for BCTC on this initiative. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm Denise King. I am the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Big Sandy Community and Technical College, and excited about our project together.
I'm Ryan Padgett, the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment and Student Success at Northern Kentucky University. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Venus Lan from Owensboro Community and Technical College. And so honored to be invited to attend this meeting and learn more about Guided Pathway Project. Thank you.
I'm Victor Tavares from West Kentucky Community and Technical College. And I'm also looking forward to this.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Ware. I'm the Provost and Chief Academic Officer for Maysville Community and Technical College. And we're happy to be a part of this initiative, and I look forward to learning more about it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Connect. I'm the interim Dean of Academic Affairs for Henderson Community College. And good morning to everybody.
And I think Maya Langley is also with us. Maya, would you like to do an introduction?
Hi, yes. My name is Maya Langley. I'm from Kentucky State University, and I am the coordinator for strategic initiatives and operations in the Office of the Provost. Some of you all I know, I was with KCTCS. I've been with KCTCS for 10 years. And Dr. Hamilton is our new provost at KSU. So I work in his office, and KSU is super excited. We got a lot of good change happening at KSU. So we're looking forward to engaging in this and milking everything from it that we can. Thank you all.
Well, I'm so excited. Let's get started. This is a good group, and we're going to have a good conversation today. And I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can jump right into to our work. And let's make sure that I can get the remote control feature here to go for us. There we go. So here's our, oh, it's kicking to the wrong screen. I am so sorry. Gotta love technology, especially when it doesn't do what it needs to do, right? Okay, perfect. So our agenda, as we started out, welcome and introductions, and we're going to talk briefly with some further.
Beth, we're
Is it-
seeing we're not seeing your screen. We're not seeing the right
Chat.
screen.
We are seeing the chat only.
Okay, let's try one more time. How about now?
No. Same chat.
Still, that is crazy.
Maybe you just need to navigate to your presentation and it'll lay on top of the chat. That happens
Probably
to me, works for me sometimes.
Probably so. I am not sure what is going on with this crazy thing today. My apologies. Let's get us back here. And I don't know, it's having its moment.
Beth, I might be able to share for you. Do you want me to try?
Please try. I'm not sure what's
we don't
actually
use Zoom, but let me see here. Let me grab it.
See if it will do it for you. It is not liking me today. Oh, perfect. Yours is coming up nicely, Ashley. There we go.
Yeah.
Did that work?
Okay, great. Perfect.
Okay. Then I'll do my best to work through it and tell me is it scrolling for everyone? I just want to make sure it's actually working.
So
Not
we're actually
scrolling.
seeing like 2 slides at once.
Yes.
Yeah. Only thing is that I have a PDF and it's not letting me share just the full PDF as a document.
So let me try one more time, Ashley, if you don't mind, and see if I've got it figured out now. Because technology just seems to have its own mindset some days. Okay. Are we good?
Yes. That's good.
So I'm going to just blow it up from here and leave the side panels because I think that's where it went amiss. So if you all will just bear with the sidebar, that will be great. And again, my apologies. But we've done our welcome and introductions, and now we're going to have some conversation about what is the network demonstration project, institutional transformation assessment. We're going to talk briefly about review of priority service areas. Actually, that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. Some question and answer and a wrap up. So to keep us on track for time, I'm going to let Ashley take the lead and walk us through with her team into the network demonstration project.
Thanks, Beth. So again, everyone, thank you for letting us join you on this call today and for serving as your partner moving forward in this work. I'm going to just start with who is JFS. I'd then like to mention our Student Success Center network, with which the collaborative and its partner colleges are now a part of, and then I'll jump into the details of the network demonstration project. JFS, if you haven't heard of us, we are a national nonprofit. Our core focus and mission is aligning our workforce and education systems. We work with community college systems and the colleges themselves across 17 states. And we also work with 4 years. Our organization also works in the K-12 space as well, and with a significant focus on pathways into the workforce, into meaningful jobs and careers. So this slide that you're looking at is just, our vision really focused on socioeconomic advancement for all. Building a society in which we have the access, skills, and resources towards the credentials that we need to achieve this advancement. JFF's offices, just for a little operational context, we are based in Boston, Massachusetts. We also have offices in Washington, D.C. and Oakland, California. But many of us work remotely. Many of us work in states that we work in, do significant work in. as well. I'm based in Austin, Texas. My colleague Tara is also in Austin with me. And so, like I said, national organization, but we have, our team is really spread out across the country. I'm going to jump now into the Student Success Center Network. So as I mentioned, the Student Success Center Network is a network of now 17 states, of which within each state there is a Student Success Center, or in your case, it's the Student Success Collaborative. And in that partnership, then we partner with the community colleges, and in some cases also with the four-year institutions in those states. You can see here, like I mentioned, the vision statement, but similarly to JFS, really just hyper focus on socioeconomic advancement and racial justice for all students and earning post-secondary credentials, but really with the emphasis with value in the labor market. That's where we put a lot of the core of our efforts. If you go to the next slide, Beth. For a little bit of context as well, the Student Success Center Network was launched in 2012. And a few, I think, interesting stats just to consider the scale at which we work. So we serve, through this network of 17 states, 52% of our US public community colleges. That encompasses 68% of all the country's US community college students, and 78% students of color at these community colleges, as well as 58% are Pell Grant recipients. Next slide. So what is the NDP, or the, you all hear a lot of acronyms, as I'm sure you already do in your work, but the Network Demonstration Project, or short is the NDP, is a national initiative that's supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We are a network similarly across the country of various organizations, JFS being one of them, who then has a network of colleges that they're partnering with specifically towards the efforts and goals of the Network Demonstration Project. In our particular cohort and our approach is, our team is very focused on the success and the support of our Student Success Center network. So the colleges that join our NDP are those that exist within our Student Success Center network. So of our 17 states who are in the network, we have 6 states who will be engaging in the Network Demonstration Project with us. And that brings us to a total of 70 institutions that are in this cohort. What that means is you all who are on this call today are essentially in a cohort with 6 other states and a total of 70 institutions. The states vary. Some bring all of their colleges that are in their, for example, Connecticut's in our Network Demonstration Project, and they're including their entire community college system, so all 12 colleges. It's a smaller state, of course. And others, though, actually have a cohort within, which is similar to what is going on with you all, where you all bringing a cohort that's very focused on specific types of support through this opportunity into our Network Demonstration Project. 3 main objectives and goals of the NDP: scale, learnings, and services. Scale, let me go back. I want to make sure I think, Beth, we lost the PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. So scale, a commitment to scaling change towards equitable student outcomes. So what does that mean? This really stems from what is a goal of both JFS through our Student Success Center Network, and what is a goal of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's really efforts to attempt to see what works for our students, what actually supports our institutions, what works, what doesn't. And when we figure out what that actually is, that leads to long-term transformative change. How do we scale that? How do more colleges get access to those supports and services? Learnings. This one I really want to elevate because this one is extremely important for JFS and for the network, and that's the dissemination of best practices and learnings across the NDP cohort. But what we are also really invested in is then to our Student Success Center network at large. Past that, of course, we would then move into learnings across the entire, what's called the Gates ecosystem, which is, all the other institutions across the country that are engaged in similar work through their representative organizations. We want, as you participate in this network demonstration project, we will be, documenting what is going on within the state, what services are they accessing, what, short-term changes are they seeing, long-term obviously happens over years, but what can we measure now to actually figure out, is this helping students? Is it advancing the campuses of students towards more equitable outcomes? Those best practices and learnings, we then want to also make sure we're elevating that to the network. So for those states and colleges that aren't able to engage in the NDP and have this opportunity for different reasons, how can we pass along to them what we're learning and the best practices that we're able to document and to note for our students? And of course, that feeds back to the scale component. And the third significant component of the NDP is services, which you all are already looped in on, and we'll talk in more detail about that today, but it's really one of the cores of this work, and it's access to high quality services to support your institutions and thus your students and faculty and staff as well. We're going to talk about two things today. One is the institutional transformation assessment, which Tara will dive into the details of, and that is an institutional assessment to figure, to help support rather, how can we identify what are the strengths of your campus and where could you actually have use some additional support through services and technical assistance. We are going to focus, I know the focus area for this group is guided pathways and also some interest in advising. So we'll dive specifically into those areas. But it's really thinking about it as the cycle of continuous improvement, right? Really over the long term. So, institutions that are conducting this assessment, helping us to really use the both qualitative and quantitative data to figure out, what is the state of the institution, fully recognizing that you all have other qualitative and quantitative data that you already use to do this. We know there are strategic plans in place. We know there are, there's obviously state policies of interest. We know there are KPIs that you already measure in your state. There's the post-secondary data partnership. So thinking of it holistically, we're not saying this is the only assessment that you have ever done or will do. It's just thinking of it as another means of input. Then identifying, designing together what service your campus or cohort of campuses could use and will best support you, putting that in place, looking long-term at what changes that brings in terms of what we're looking at in both qualitative and quantitative data and its change. I'm gonna pause there. Beth, I think we'll take questions at the end, or I'm happy now to field any, whatever you prefer.
I'm just wondering if you've gone on to the next slide. Okay, now you've gone on. Never mind.
We've moved forward. So there, Ashley, we can do that. Phyllis, are there any questions in the chat that we might need to address at this time?
There are not.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward with our presentation, we're going to be talking about these next three in particular areas: the ITA, which Ashley just mentioned, the sense-making meetings that will follow after the completion of the ITA, and then the institutional team lead role. And so Tara and I have decided to kind of play a little divide and conquer here, and I will be addressing the first three slides with inputs. So Tara, feel free to jump in at any point that you feel like I'm overlooking something that I should be addressing. I'm happy to allow you to supplement and or redirect if I happen to go down the wrong trail. But thinking about the ITA, and a little bit about the full version, which is roughly 130 questions. And it's over 11 different topics, and they will, it's a tool to gather input from leaders and practitioners. And so it's very broad, and it's useful to help participants identify areas of growth and things that it talks about here in the slide about spanning pathway solutions and operating capacities. It's useful to see how participants perceive areas of the institution that are outside of their day-to-day job role. Those perceptions are gathered, and then they're going to be part of a sense-making meeting, a dynamic meeting, where those responses spark this discussion and play connect the dots. And the goal is to learn more about each of those perceptions to come to consensus to prioritize our next steps. Tara, do you have anything you would like to add?
would just add that what we've heard from other institutions that have taken it is how valuable it is to gather the perceptions of those institutional leadership roles and folks that are more on the ground and connecting with students, and really see where there is alignment or where there's differences in their perceptions of how the institution is kind of progressing in their transformation work.
Great, thank you. So most are familiar with this graph, this chart that we have sent out before. This was provided to us and we shared early in the process about the stages and the steps for the timeline of how to go through the ITA, from pre-deployment all the way through follow-up. Onboarding, who's going to take the ITA, to save your results, who participates in which of the sessions, and then of course the next steps. So speaking a little bit about taking the ITA, your full transformational team should take the full ITA. Those are your leaders, your chancellors, your provosts, those with some sort of direct experience in leading the unit levels that are identified in those topics. The only person that I want to stress a little bit about here about the results, so your individual results come to you directly. Your lead will have access to the dashboard, and the dashboard will be more anonymous, and it will only see the results. So it is somewhat anonymous in its scope, but those saving of your results will be used later in the sense making meetings, and you may, of course, with your team, feel free to share. When you do the student success community participation of the ITA, it's a much smaller scale, it's 30 plus. It is from folks who sit in other levels, frontline workers. We strongly encourage your students to have a voice. We also encourage that because they're not going to be part of the sense-making meetings, and it will give you a feel for how your students are receiving your institution and your goals, and how compare that kind of to how you feel like you're communicating that. There might be a very eye-opening moment where you feel like you're communicating more with services than what your students are hearing. The next steps and into the participation in sense-making meetings, that again is your transformational team. And those will be held either virtually or in person. Those sessions will be 4 to 6 hours worth of work. And we will be identifying a North Star project to help guide that. So I'm going to let Tara chime in because I'm sure she's got some things to add to us there.
I have heard of some institutions that asked some of those student success community respondents to participate in sense-making sessions. So if that is something that your institution would want to do, I think you feel free to include those folks in that session. I think one of the things we also hear really emphasized around the sense-making session is that you schedule based on the most senior person that you want in that meeting. You schedule it based on their availability, and then you kind of work backwards from there and see what time is going to work for that broader group. So that way you've made sure that the person that you really need to hear these results for your campus, that person's going to be in the room and participating.
Thank you, Tara. Now looking into what we were just speaking of, the ITA and who takes it. Below you will notice that the transformation team, these are recommendations for who should be a part of which group takes which portion. And so I did highlight the students. We did select that option because that's one of the focuses of the Student Success Collaborative, is to hear that student voice. And so we're trying to elevate that. That's certainly up to each individual institution, whether or not you feel like you can do that. And if you do choose to do that, we also would like for you to consider maybe incorporating students who normally aren't part of having their voice heard, like someone beside your student ambassador program, or, you know, the presidents of your sororities and fraternities and those sort of things. Maybe it's just a student that you happen to build a relationship with who, you know, came through your office on a Tuesday, you know, to get a broader span and so a broader voice. Just a little bit of just letting you digest that slide. Again, these slides are going to come out to you after the presentation. So no need to try to scribe all that down really quickly. You'll be able to access that. Tara, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think this one has a good list of who you should consider. And really, the more voices you hear from your campus community, I think the more useful this tool is going to be. So don't be shy about asking people to participate.
Great, thank
You
you.
have a
And I'm
Question
sorry.
for you. Do you have an
Sure.
example of what you mean by external partners who might be invited to participate in the short survey? What kinds of folks are you thinking about there?
So that might be, I'm trying to think of an example I've heard from another institution. So I know, for example, there are a group of institutions around the Austin area that have taken the ITA. They included within this, there's an Austin College Access Network. And so they asked members of the Austin College Access Network to contribute. There's a nonprofit that works with colleges in the Austin area around student support services. So they asked those kind of the staff from that organization to participate. So if there are community partners, perhaps even maybe your local workforce board could be someone that you would want to contribute to this kind of sense of understanding about the focus on student success.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Tara, I'm going to turn this over to you now for slide 12.
Perfect. So the as we've kind of highlighted, the ITA really looks at three core areas. So there are sections that are focused on operating capacities, and those could be your IT structure, your financial aid processes, policies that your institution is putting in place. There are also kind of solution areas. So things like advising, emergency services, and now I'm blanking, but those would be considered solution areas. Then there are the guided pathways practices. There are two modules. So there's a module that's targeted at 2-year institutions and a separate module on pathways for 4-year institutions. And then all of these are wrapped around student success. One of the pieces that I think is really powerful about the way the ITA rubrics are structured is that the guided pathways rubric touches on a number of areas that are important to guided pathways and keeping students engaged to completion. And then the other modules really dig deeper into those topic areas. And so you have a nice surface look across the pieces with the pathways modules, and then you're able to go deeper into really picking out what's working or not on your campus and where you may need to highlight. And I think the next slide actually lists all of the rubrics, so we can refresh my memory. So in addition to those pathways rubrics I mentioned, there's one on advising, there's one on digital learning, which we know has become such a focus over the last couple of years as we go in and out of COVID protocols. We have developmental education, that emergency aid piece. There's the leadership and culture section, kind of what's happening from the administration side and the culture on the campus. Strategic finance, institutional research would be one of those other operational capacity areas. Information technology, institutional and state policies are two separate modules, but really critical to thinking about the work that you're able to do on your campus. As you can see, there's a lot of topic areas. And so what we're going to encourage you to do in the sense making session is really drill into just a handful of these that are most critical to the work you have underway immediately. But having this additional data for you to come back to as your work evolves, as you start thinking about maybe updating your strategic plan or looking forward into the work you want to do next year, you'll have all of this, you'll have gathered all of this feedback already that you'll be able to tap into. So that's, in non-COVID times, they really think the sense-making session is kind of an all-day in-person meeting where you really are digging into the data. But what we've heard from from our colleagues in this work is that when you're doing this online, when you're trying to juggle everyone's schedules that are crazy these days, having a 2 to 4 hour meeting that's really focused on those handful of areas will be a much more productive way of approaching that sense making. So I think critical for each of our institutions is to think about the role of that institutional lead, and that's really the person that's going to champion this work on the campus to help facilitate the process. And so really that person is going to be responsible for identifying who on the campus will be asked to participate in both that transformation team role as well as the student success community role. We've the facilitator guide that we've shared with the SSC has draft emails, timelines, a lot of materials that can really support your work. So you don't have to, reproduce anything from scratch. So those are available. Really one of the most important pieces is scheduling that sense making session and then kind of backwards mapping how your rollout is going to go from there. And then co-facilitating the sense making session for your campus. And so the dashboards that will be generated as your respondents start taking the survey have some nice graphics and visuals. We've also shared, there's one of our partner organizations has created kind of an Excel spreadsheet that generates some additional graphs and charts. If that would be useful for you, we can make sure you have that. It's just really trying to hone in on what messaging works for your team, how they like to take in information, and what's going to facilitate those conversations.
Thank you, Tara, which that bleeds over nicely into the role of the collaborative. And so we will be working with the institutional team lead. As Tara mentioned, there are emails already out there. So we're going to help you through providing resources, helping you draft those emails. We're here to help answer questions as they may come up related to the ITA or the NDP in general. We will work with the lead to review the dashboard and identify the areas for discussion, try to hone that down to narrow the focus to be more impactful. We want to be your co-lead when we do sense meeting makings. We want to share that load with the campus lead. We want to keep you engaged and provide support for campus partners throughout the NDP. And then there's the disclaimer of other duties as assigned, because we realize that being the campus lead, you may have some things come up that are unique to just you. And so that's our role. We want to be supporting you through the process from beginning to end in the manner that you need us to do that. So points of contact. So we've broken ourselves into who's going to be working with which institution so that we can become more personalized. I will be with Henderson, Big Sandy, Southeast, and Maysville. Phyllis Clark will be with Jefferson, West Kentucky, and K-State, and Lily Massey-McKinley will be with Bluegrass, Northern Kentucky, and Owensboro. So now that you know who you're going to be working with, here's our next steps. ITA campus rosters, those who's going to be taking the full transformation as well as the shorter version, please get those to us by close of business on next Friday, because we are really crunching for time. We will do anything we can to help you with that process. If you need to bounce some ideas off, just send us an email and ask for some time to get on our calendars to have that one-on-one conversation. We also want to have those one-on-one meetings with the point of contact for your institution to map out the responsibilities and the timeline by the 21st. So again, some one-on-one time with the member of the collaborative who'll be working most closely with you. And I will personally, and I'm sure Dr. Massey-McKinley and Phyllis will also be sending out some dates that we have available in hopes that those will match your schedule. And so they'll just be a little more streamlined process than 15 emails trying to identify a good time. So hopefully we'll get that underway really quickly. Now I'm going to pause before we jump into our next session with the review of the service areas. Just a quick pulse check to see if there are any questions in the chat, Phyllis, that we need to address.
No, we're good.
Thank you, ma'am. So Paul, you and Ashley, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Beth. So we're going to jump in to two service areas of the list that was referenced in the chat, and that Tara also kind of went through when she was talking about the ITA. There are various bucket areas through which actually colleges in the NDT can look for and seek services and technical assistance support through planning conversations, and really Beth and Lily and Phyllis knowing what, hearing from you all and what your colleges want to focus on and what you really could use, need the most support in right now. We're focusing on two today, and that is advising services. So what's available? What does that mean? What does it actually look like when it touches on the campus? Who are the providers that are available to support your colleges, as well as pathways? I'm going to invite my colleague Caroline, who's going to jump into some of the details for you. I'll also make sure that you all know that Paul, as you mentioned earlier, is also Paul is with SOVA, and SOVA is really one of the primary partners in the pathways service area. So we'll do our best to answer questions, and then Paul, who is very much an expert in this on behalf of his team, I'll also invite you, Paul, to jump in and offer your guidance and questions as well. So Caroline, do you want to get started, and then I can also chime in wherever helpful.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, yeah, so let's start with advising. So actually, Beth, do you want to stay on that last slide for a minute? That'd be great. So the advising services, that bucket is provided through the Advising Success Network, or ASN, which is facilitated by NASPA. Again, coming at you with the acronyms. But the Advising Success Network is a partnership really among higher ed organizations with shared missions, expertise around advising, with student success as its objective. And so the actual service providers within the advising services bucket are listed here. We have ASCU, which is the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, ATD, or Achieving the Dream, EDUCAUSE, NACADA, the Global Community for Academic Advising, and then the National Resource Center for the First Year Experience and Students in Transition. So these are the providers. We can go ahead and go on, Beth, to get a little bit more into the weeds about what these services actually mean and what you can pursue through them. So ASN offers 3 service tracks through which to pursue services. So those tracks are listed here, and each track has modules. I'm not going to go through the modules within each track today. That might be a little bit of information overload. But we are going to be sharing slides with you afterwards, in addition to what we're sharing here, that can have just provide more detailed information for exploratory purposes. So we'll make sure we get those out to you. But just about those tracks, ASN recommends that institutions goes through the modules within each of them. But they also said folks can mix and match, especially if you've already demonstrated certain outcomes have met. So again, that's just a little bit more information perhaps than you need today. But we'll go through not the modules within each track, but really what those outcomes are within each track, to help you understand what the goals or tasks of pursuing each one would be. So let's go ahead and dive into that first track, track 1, which is, sorry, it's a little hard to read. Apologies, we'll send these out, but this is the education and awareness track. So as ASN has defined it, engaging in a service through track 1, institutions will, 1, identify core components of holistic advising, 2, explore needs and areas of opportunity in advising redesign, and 3, examine their unique student groups through an equity lens. Track 2, perfect, which is roles, definitions, competencies, and career track development. Through pursuing a service in this track, institutions will, 1, map advising competencies and align them with advising roles, develop an operational definition of advising and provide guidelines, And 3, develop that action plan for advising career track development. And then the 3rd track that is currently offered, track 3, which is policies and process redesign. So through a service in this track, institutions can expect to complete an equity-based audit, develop an equity policy to assess how equity is centered in advising practices, and 3, develop that action plan for advising redesign that includes student support policies and processes. So those are the 3 tracks that are currently offered in the advising services track right now. ASN has also said there's 5 additional service tracks coming out this year. So there's going to be more of an opportunity to align with what your institution needs there. So those are all listed here. Tracks 5, so the assessment and advising program evaluation, and track 8, leadership and college preparedness, are both going to be available this coming March. The other ones we don't have the timeline for just yet, and we don't have those outcomes specific to track 5 and 8 yet, but just a little plug there that those ones will be the first available in these 5 additional service tracks that are coming out. So that was a very quick overview of the advising services provided through ASN in partnership with their providers. So thanks, Beth. We're gonna,
Quick question on the advising services. So we had 2 campuses that originally had identified advising services as a top priority for them, and that was NKU and KSU. And I was just wondering, since they're kind of this cohort of 2 underneath the advising services, they could pick a different track if they each had something different as a priority, right? Or would they have to be in the same track because there's only 2 of them?
Lily, I can jump in. So that's what we had chatted about before, that the way the structure is tactically set up, we would want 2 institutions pursuing this. You know, we need to have really at least like a cohort of at least 2 pursuing one service area. So I do think it would, I mean, we can always chat with ASN and figure out if there's some flexibility there. So I don't want to speak ahead of them, but my gut is probably that they would need at least 2 colleges, institutions pursuing one track together, which is, you know, one specific service together. Really, I think it's just about like resources and making sure that, you know, because otherwise it's 2 different projects and limited capacity and time, you know, as everybody. So that's my understanding. Maybe there's a way to kind of mix 2 together. We can talk a little more in detail of that, but at blanket, I would say it would be at least 2.
Okay, so that just means that it's really important for both our Kentucky State and our NKU partners to, at some point, if it's not like incredibly clear and they're both completely aligned from the get-go, that we have a conversation about what would be most beneficial to both that they do have in common. So
yeah, we should chat, because then, you know, maybe there's even, if there is 2 interest areas, but they do need the 2, maybe it's a combination of 2 and some form of, you know, kind of combined support. So perhaps that's an option.
Thank you, Ashley. Phyllis, do you have a question?
Yes, there's a question in the chat from Dr. King. How quickly might they access the first 3 tracks?
So the timeline, which we'll go into a little more detail on process and timeline at the very end, but it is, okay. You all are administering the institutional transformation assessment this January, and you know that takes a handful of weeks. Once you get through the sense-making meetings and you complete, you know, the process of the ITA, at that point, services can begin. And so what we can also do a little bit of is start designing and talking through the service need and kind of parallel to while you're administering the ITA. So we could already start those conversations with you on what services you may be interested, to have you really ready to go, maybe, you know, like contract in place as soon as possible. So as soon as you're done with the ITA process or closest to, we can try to kickstart that service. So it's looking like, I think beginning of March or mid-March is when we said it would probably be the soonest it could start thinking of the ITA administration timeline.
Okay, thank you. So Caroline, you want to jump back in with the guided pathways?
Yep, and apologies, I have some construction in the background, so if you can hear that, my apologies. All right, so the other high priority service area for some of your institutions, guided pathways, and Paul, please feel free to jump in at any point here, and we'll make sure we have some time for you to speak as well at the end. So the service providers in the pathways service area really are there to help build capacity at any stage of the guided pathways journey for institutions. And so they've really broken this down into 3 areas for support. One is planning. So that's about establishing practices, policies, procedures, or that could be implementation, which is thinking about clarifying pathways, supporting students, and then also evaluation. So that's more about sustainability and improvement. There are 4 providers in the guided pathways service area, which are listed here. And then also in the chart there, you can see really where their focus areas are. So that is KYSSC, the Center for Community College Student Engagement, CCA, Complete College America, OCCRL, Office of Community College Research and Leadership, and then the UNCF Institute for Capacity Building. We can move on, Beth. So if your institution is in or wants to focus on the planning phase, this services, the focus areas here will be on laying the groundwork really and introducing those student success journeys. So this can look like survey tools for understanding engagement, equity and organizational strength assessments, looking at data and policy environment, advocacy, strategic planning, and more. Then if your institution is more in the implementation phase, this area is more about programs, policies, and procedures redesign, as well as collaborative planning and scale. So here you think about project management support, action plan development, support with communities of practice, facilitation, and coaching. And that last piece, that evaluation stage is thinking about, well, evaluation and sustainability and ongoing improvement. And so there the services are like workshops to understand student engagement data, focus groups to understand gaps in alignment, more data work, and tools for continuous improvement. So that's a bit of an overview about the guided pathways service areas. Paul, I want to open it up to you if you have more to add here, but then I also want to pass it to Ashley. Ashley, if there's any more you want to say about the process, I know that you spoke to it a little bit with the questions coming in, but just if there's any, and I saw some comments and questions coming in through the chat that I didn't get a chance to read as I was going through, but we'll open it up, Paul and or Ashley here.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm going to invite Paul first before I get into just the boring operational stuff. Paul, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Thank you. And just one quick comment, because I know there will be a lot of like, okay, what do we do now? Kinds of questions that Ashley's going to get to. Just want to call out something that's likely at least a couple of you are thinking. And Dr. King, I noticed this in your comment. So you may be doing pathways, but have questions about advising. I mean, and that is totally normal, because usually when you're working on a pathways effort, you know that's, you can't keep that contained in just one area. That's really affects your entire institution. So it's really common for pathways providers to be working on developmental education, IT infrastructure, advising, transfer. These are areas that are very common for pathways providers to be focused on, in addition to just generally what do we mean by pathways. So I just kind of wanted to call that out, and that's something that can unfold, as we get down into the weeds.
Thanks, Paul. So let me just try to probably just go into a little bit of operational and timeline, maybe a little more than we're going to get into what happens next how do you even go about accessing services? What role do we have? Does the collaborative have, et cetera, which was already covered earlier. But the next immediate step, as we spent some time diving into in this meeting, is the ITA. You are going to move forward now into administering the ITA, conducting the assessment, moving into sense-making meetings. That takes, Tara knows best, but it's about 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, is the timeline to really get through the whole process. Tara, jump in if I'm wrong. You'll start that, and
is our estimate that we've been hearing. Yes.
Was that right, Tara? Sorry.
Sorry, we've mostly been hearing about 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. The point is of that data is to really be able to hone in on and figure out, okay, maybe what types of services and supports really does your institution need? Could we identify and design together to best support your students? Thinking of timeline and, realistically knowing that you all also know your campuses well, right? You're not like only waiting on the ITA to tell you about your campus, well, what your needs are. We can go ahead and start some of those service design conversations together based on what you already bring to the table. Simultaneously administering the ITA and then seeing what comes from that data as well. We will, with the collaborative support, so we JFS and with the collaborative, will partner together to help then move the service through its, inquiry and proposal. There's a process, matching with the right provider to actually deliver that service on your campus, the timeline, the contract, etc. I believe this has already been mentioned to you, but of course it's at no service to your college or institution. It's at no cost, no cost to your college or institution, this service engagement. So you'll hear directly from the collaborative. We'll partner with Lily and Beth and Phyllis to get those services designed and move through the process to get it into contract and ready to go. With hope, that we can get these in place for you all, maybe even by March if possible, but really I think about it in that March, April timeframe, probably realistically speaking. Lastly, the services can go through the end of this year. So when we lay out the timeline, it can be the remainder of spring semester. Summer, of course, that's depending what's going on at the college. You all can figure out if that makes sense to your institution, or into the fall as well. I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions? And also I'm going to say one more thing. We will send out, as Caroline mentioned, I know that Beth will send out these slides from today, but we have a few more detailed slides about the services as well. We didn't want to overload you with too many details, so then you can look through them and get a sense a bit more into the details of these service areas.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley. So opening the floor up to any questions that may have come up that were not popped into the chat, or if there was a question in the chat and you would like some further information. Go ahead, Dr. Mayo.
And this has been very informative, and I'm very appreciative of this session. My question that I come away with immediately is, once the ITA is administered and the results are received, based on our meeting today, myself, who's the lead at BCTC, and someone from the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative, we will meet to then process, analyze that information, or will there be other support in helping to analyze that information prior to the sense-making meetings?
So Lily, you're going to be working with Bluegrass. I'll let you take that one.
Yes, Karen. I was just going to say, each of us from the collaborative will be available as much as needed to work with our campus partners and our point of contact to make meaning, to prep for that sense-making conversation. And so if you mean, are we going to engage JFF? Are we going to engage service providers also in kind of looking at that initial results of the ITA? We have a great resource in SOVA, as well as, I think our other JFF partners here to do that as needed. And so because this is the collaborative's first time kind of going through this ITA process, we are soaking it all up, kind of just like you are. We have a training later this week with the ITA provider on kind of how to facilitate and make the most out of those conversations. And so as we gain more knowledge and understanding, we'll also make sure that we're passing that forward. But we have some great advisors that are going to make sure that it is very thoughtful in how those meetings are, I guess, structured and facilitated to get the most out of them. Yeah. So I'll be reaching out to you, Karen, and Ryan, and Owensboro. I'm sorry, is that Dr. Ware? I might be mistaken.
I'm Maysville.
Oh, you're Maysville. Okay, I'm sorry. Who's with Owensboro? Dr. King?
Dr. Salon is with Owensboro. I'm Big Sandy.
And I'm muted here, so yes.
Okay,
there she is.
Great. So thank you. Thank you for the answer and for the question. That was a very good question. Do we have others that are out there by chance? Okay, not hearing any. I'm going to get us all wrapped up because our last slide was just that. It was the wrap up. And we do have a couple of things that I'd like to make mention of. I'm going to speak about the April Student Success Convening, and then I'm going to ask Lily to take the Impact Exchange, just because I think she'll explain it a little better than perhaps I would. And I want to make sure that we're all aware that it exists and what a powerful tool that is for all of us to use. But most of you are aware that CP usually hosts in April, used to be called the Summit. This year, we're calling it the Student Success Convening, and it's all about collaboration and innovation through collaboration and how to work together. Day one will be pretty well an open call, so that'll be a very broad topics, but we're hoping to make day two about teamwork. We're hoping that the teams that are on your campuses will hang out with us on the second half of that day to do some teamwork with your team, with Casey as your support, to move this needle a little bit more, to be more impactful. So I want to put that on your plates, and we'll be sending out a hold the date here before long. Thank you, Phyllis. Summit dates are popped into the chat for you, but make plans to not depart after lunch on day two. Plan to use that time for this work while you will have our undivided attention. Your team with KYSSC will be there to work with you that whole afternoon. So Lily, if you will take on the Impact Exchange, we're down to 2 minutes.
Wow, this well-oiled machine. Good job, Beth. So the Impact Exchange is kind of an online community of practice for all of our campuses. And we'll be launching it in just a couple of weeks. Actually, I think on the 19th is our goal to launch this online platform where our higher ed partners across the state will be able to communicate and connect with one another. You'll be able to ask questions, share resources, share things that are working, be in either an open or closed community with your colleagues in order to kind of talk about, where you might be facing a challenge that they might have experienced and have had success in the past. We do so much just within the community of our campus, a little bit in isolation from all of the great work that's happening across the state. And so, we really hope to kind of scale the access to the knowledge and resources across the state to help us all kind of move forward. And the way that this is connected to our network demonstration project is we'll be having those cohorts. So if you're an advising services network and y'all decided that track 2 is where it's at, both of your implementation teams will have a community within the Impact Exchange to share how it's going, to ask each other questions, to post resources that you found, or even for your service provider to engage in that community and be sharing resources with you. If you think about listservs that you've been a part of, and then, oh, somebody shared a great resource. Gosh, it was a month ago. Where was that? I have to search my email. I can't find it, or I'm too busy even to read. This is a way to keep it all in one place. And now we don't have to resend anything. It's very easy to search, access, and we'll be doing more information on this as we move down the road. But just excited that we not only have kind of a community of practice where we can bring people together for like conversation like today, but that also we'll be able to keep the conversation going beyond those in-person convenings as you all like 24/7, 365. If something comes up, you can share it out. people can respond, collaborative can assist, and we'll just hopefully, move even faster down the road.
Great. So thank you, Lily. We're at the noon hour. Just a huge thank you to everyone who attended and participated. So thankful for JFF and SOVA with Paul being with us today to get this orientation up, and looking forward to it. This is going to be a great work with some long reaching and deep, full impacted work. I'm just so excited for what it means to our students and to the state. So thank you all so much for your time, and we'll be in touch soon.